Every time you play a new game, there's going to be some learning you have to do before you can really understand the game's mechanics, but there's a very thick line between a game trying way too much to tell you how to play and not trying to tell you at all. I really hate it when the first 2 hours of a game is just tutorial. I get it, your game has some complexity to it, but I want to be able to jump into the core of the action without having to read through a 30-page briefing of what to expect, how to handle it, what to do, where to go, how to feel, what to see, what to eat. But there's something I hate even more than that. Something I hate more than phonies, the color magenta, titles that end with exclamations, and my own voice combined. It's this trend in online games where they don't try at all to teach new players how to play. Like, I get that they're supposed to learn through experience, but I like it when games let you progress at your own pace. I like games that respect your ability to seek information and not shove it in your face. I had never played a Dark Souls game in my life, but when I jumped into the third one, it did a pretty radical job of teaching me the mechanics without forcing me to play through a virtual Simon Says to know how to play it. If you want to know how to do shit, you just run over the messages and read them. Bam, you're done. I'm not talking about these games though. I'm talking about games that flat out don't give you the information at all. Or at least they do, and it's really cryptic and hard to understand. Team Fortress 2, a title that I hold closer to my heart than anything else in the world, is a repugnant example of this. TF2 doesn't make any effort at all to teach new players how the mechanics of their world works. When you first get the game, your first instinct is to just join a game, because, well, it's the first thing you see when you open a menu. Once you do that, and you find a game and you join it, you're put onto the pick a class menu, and let's pretend I'm a new player. Right now, I have no clue what the fuck's going on. We've got 0 medics, too many specialist supports, not enough power classes like heavy or demo, but none of that information is shown to new players. Instead, all they know is what classes their team already has, and mind you, they have no clue what any of these classes really do. So now you've got to blindly choose a class based on what their description tells you about them, but each description is extremely brief and only paints enough of a picture to give you a vague understanding of their role. So now you've chosen a class, and you've chosen it at random, mind you, because this early in, you're not going to know what the concept of team composition or crucial picks is. The game doesn't tell you that a healer is needed, or that you've got too many of something, so you pick a class based on whoever has the cutest headshot, and then you're thrown into a game without a clue how to play it. No explanation of how your weapons work, no explanation of what your job is, you're just tossed in and told, fight! Now hear me out here. I get that when you play shooters, it's inherently the player's responsibility to teach themselves how to play it, because it's not like a single player game where you've got all the time in the world to listen to drones go on and on about controls, but that's not really an excuse to make 0 effort to do so. When a player has 0 ways to learn the basics of a game, they're going to have a rough time trying to actually enjoy it because they're spending way more time trying to figure out what they're doing than they are actually playing it. Hold it! I'm sorry, I was wrong all along. They actually do have a tutorial for classes, and it's not even functional. I'm serious, man. I can't even start the training, and I have no idea why. It just doesn't work. Googling it shows that training has been bug-ridden for years, but let's say this is somehow only a bug affecting me. Even with access to the tutorial, it barely teaches you the fundamentals of the game. You learn how to jump, crouch, switch your weapons, which sounds like enough, but keep in mind there's hundreds upon hundreds of factors and mechanics in the game that aren't even so much as skimmed through it. Don't even get me started on how this information is only available in the tutorial and isn't able to be checked when you're in an actual game. But it's alright, because there's one other way to learn about the mechanics of a game, one system that could completely undo the fabric of all my arguments, a system that is accurately relaying information to the player, and that system is loading tips. You heard me. This itty bitty shitty right here is your best source of information as a player. These tips aren't available as a viewable option per class on the loadout screen. They aren't organized or categorized, just random tips you can skim through on your stats page or in a loading screen. Why? The system is fine as like a side addition to your already well explained game, but they use it like it's their primary source to learn new things you otherwise might not have known. And because there's no organization, you have to spam through it if you want to find tips specifically about a class that you're interested in. And even if theoretically you managed to get far into the game with virtually 0 knowledge of how to play it, and you learned all the basics, you're still left shit out of luck on learning all the deeper core mechanics of the game. Air strafing, C-tapping, crouch jumping, backpedal speed, damage ramp, random crit kills, disguise, weapon switch, smoke, I didn't even know what the fuck a dead ringer was till I yelled at somebody for hacking their respawn, and they told me about achievement items. Yeah, achievement items, that's right, because this game has unlockable weapons. So now you've got to learn what another 100 something items do, and you aren't even given them for free. You have to unlock them, craft them, trade for them, buy them. It's stupid. Items like the sandwich or the Uber saw are so vital, you almost can't even play competitively without owning them, and yet new players won't have access to them until they've clocked in like 100 hours of the game. As somebody who has 7,500 goddamn hours in the game, the idea of not knowing what a weapon is pretty funny. As someone with 7.5 hours in the game, it's probably kind of aggravating and confusing and dumb. So let's compare this to another game, Overwatch.
Boo fucking who.
Overwatch has a functional tutorial to teach you the basics of the game. It also gives you a handy menu you can open at any time to see exactly what your abilities are and how to use them. And if you're not sure of what hero to play, the game has that covered too. It tells everybody on your team what your composition is missing or what it might do well having more of. This makes it easy to pick a hero if you're not sure what the game calls for. This is all pretty inviting to new players. The game might take more time to get used to than standard shooters because of all the unique abilities and heroes, but the game at least tries to make it as smooth as possible of a transition. So like, let me make an example. My older brother, who has no extensive knowledge of the outside core shooters and titles like Tony Hawk's Madden, NFL, NBA, 2K17, 18, 20, PGA Tour, 08, Knuckles. Basically, dude's hooked on Overwatch now, started playing on my account, and even though he was going against master rank players in quick play, he still liked the concept of the game. When he moved on to a fresh account, he started climbing in rank already because he gets to progress at his own rank, facing players at his own level. He can view information whenever he needs it. That's a good introduction to a game. TF2 doesn't even have a ranking system. In casual, there's pretty much no MMR, leading to 12v12 clusterfucks of the top 2 players on the scoreboard being gods, and the bottom 98% being people ranging from frequently plays to just installed it 3 minutes ago. Matchmaking in TF2 is also a complete joke. Ranks are meaningless, there are 0 placement matches, and even if you're the highest rank in the goddamn game, you'll still get paired up against and with new players. Imagine if we made Little League kids play seriously in the Major League. That's pretty much what competitive TF2 is right now. So what does this all have to do with learning curve? The point I'm getting at here is that TF2 has an extremely steep learning curve. It takes almost no steps to teach the player how to progress as an individual. Overwatch has a comparatively smaller learning curve, but does a way better job of making it easy to understand. If you're bad at Overwatch, it's because you probably still need to get comfortable with the game and maybe develop some better game sense. If you're bad in TF2, nobody can even blame you, because unless you sift through dozens of guides and videos amassed by the competitive community, which all get outdated after every weapon and class rebalance, you won't have any way to know how to actually improve as a player. TF2 is like if we forced kids to assemble their toys like factory workers before they were allowed to play with them. It doesn't make sense. And don't tell me the game being old is an excuse. It gets updated every other week and has an active development team while staying top 5 on Steam at all times. I don't expect them to be able to explain every single weapon and every single engine exploit turned staple feature in the game, but even the most basic mechanics like hitting F6 to open a menu that tells you what your current items are capable of doing would fill such an essential hole that the game's currently empty of. I like to think part of this is why the game is struggling so much to break back into relevancy. It's hard to make your game popular when no one really quite knows how it's meant to be played. Anyways, let me take a minute here to clarify something. Good learning curves are not equatable with skill ceilings. Overwatch gets its easy learning curve by dumbing down mechanics and making it as baby-proof as possible. Complex maneuvers are boiled down to hitting a key, and there's significantly less mechanics that factor into an individual's ability to comprehend the game. TF2 is hard to master, but that isn't inherently bad, because objectively, TF2 requires a lot more individual skill to succeed as a team. The issue is, the game does a bad job of preparing players to fill in their role on the team. And part of this isn't just because they don't spoon-feed you instructions on how to abuse engine features, it's because there's no established global rule set. The closest thing to one is matchmaking, which limits you to 6 players, but has 0 class limits, 0 weapon bans, and nobody even plays that shit anyways, so obviously nobody takes the feature seriously in a sense that it's what TF2's future is gonna be. And I don't think that's because players are close-minded or stupid. And don't get me wrong, they're very close-minded and stupid, but that's not why they hate competitive. They hate this competitive because it sucks. Ignoring the fact that, like I said, Valve takes no effort to teach players their game, the game is also not balanced competitively, at least not without community tweaks. There are weapons which become borderline overpowered in the right hands. There are also items that are borderline direct downgrades, but players use them anyways because they don't realize it. My point is, it's a bit of a fixer-upper. TF2 would be a fucking awesome esport if Valve took the proper steps to fixing up the game and both rebalancing it, as well as opening the gates for new players to get familiar with it. It has more creativity, soul, and personality than any other shooter I've ever seen, and that includes Overwatch. Overwatch has mountains of personality, but it doesn't have the touch Valve titles have from their on-point writing and ability to make games fun at their core. In fact, all comparisons between the two games I've made here are purely to highlight the high points and low points of each game. It's not even to directly compare them. Overall, I just think TF2 will struggle to find itself back at a high point of relevancy ever again, unless it manages to really outdo itself on improving. And I mean, as long as they don't pull some stupid shit like taking an entire half a year to put out the first rebalance update after the matchmaking release, I think things might actually turn out alright. Oh god damn.